Hello, John Bloodworth Gentleman Crafter here with a quick look through some of the materials you'll be able to use to make stencils and masks with your brother's Scan and Cut. I'm going to start with the thinnest and work my way up the range and give you a couple of thoughts and ideas as we go. Now the first up is basically cheapo adhesive vinyl. This is the same stuff that you've probably used in a variety of other projects that you have done already, but basically you would cut this out, peel off the mask or stencil, stick it to your project and pounce your colour through. Preferably something not too viscous, something quite dry or that won't go on without squidging. Basically because it's very, very thin, so you won't get any depth in your material. It's great for things like airbrushing or spattering or spritzing, but again, just try out some different ideas. Now, as a less low budget version of that, we have something that's designed for purpose, and that is airbrushing masking film. And this is very similar in the way that you cut it. It's slightly thinner than the vinyl, but it is also slightly translucent as well, so you can see where you're putting your stencil and of course where you will ultimately put your colour. Both you will need to cut with a half cut setting, so on DX machines that would be the automated half cut. With CM machines you will need to reduce the blade depth and potentially the blade pressure until you find that sweet spot to cut through the vinyl or stencil sheet and not the actual carrier backing. Weed everything before you use your stencil as well, as that makes it much easier, and of course they are reusable, so make sure you keep the carrier sheet to put them back onto. Vinyl generally comes in flat sheets when we're using it for craft, but you can buy much bigger rolls if you need to. And stencil film comes in all sorts of different varieties. This one's on a roll by Frisket, but you've got different brands and different options out there. Just search for adhesive vinyl or stencil film. Now, moving on from that, I've got mylar. This is quite a rigid material. Let me take it away from this. This is quite a rigid material. It's translucent, so you can see through it. You cut it in the way you would cut any other plastic sheet on your machines. So with the DX machines, obviously just use auto blade settings and that should be enough. With CM machines, you may need to play with the actual pressure rather than the blade depth too much. This is 125 micron, so that's 0.125 of a millimeter. Now, if I grab a piece of 250 cardstock, this is actually thicker than the mylar. So whatever blade depth you would use for 250 GSM cardstock, drop it down a little, because you're essentially using half the thickness, but this mylar sheet is denser than cardstock, so you may need just a little bit more pressure. Because mylar and obviously the polypropylene, that's not easy to say, come in different thicknesses, then the settings will vary across the range, so it's going to have to be a little bit of experimentation and test cutting to find the right settings for your machine. Now if I show you the one that I've cut the same stencil that I cut from the vinyl and the self-adhesive stencil sheet from this. As you can see, it's quite flimsy at 125, but if you're just applying maybe powders or pouncing ink through, this is absolutely fine. Obviously washable and you can reuse it. Now from there, we go at the thickness, and mylar you can get in 190 micron as well. There are lots of other thicknesses available, but generally 190 I would say would be a standard thickness for general stencils. And by that I mean stencils that we're going to apply colour through by pouncing or pressing through. For textured texture pastes, I would probably say that we would need to go up to maybe 300, 350 micron. And I'll show you in a second because I've got some polypropylene in that thickness. But as you can see, less flimsy than the 125, which I've already lost. So you can see this is more like paper. This is getting towards a thin acetate film sort of thickness. So as you go up the numbers, the thickness and the rigidity of the stencil increases. So let me put that to one side. Next up, for a budget alternative, we can use acetate sheet. Now this is 220 micron acetate sheet, obviously totally clear, so difficult to show, but it cuts perfectly on your scan and cut machines. I will say, however, this is denser than the mylar and therefore may take a couple of passes on your machine. With DX machines, it will automatically calculate if it needs to cut twice. With CM machines, if it doesn't cut through the first time on the settings that you've got, you may need to just, rather than increase depth and pressure, you may need to just actually cut it twice. Okay, so that's one alternative. Now we're moving on to polypropylene. This is a much more flexible and soft feeling film compared to the mylar, and it cuts beautifully like a dream on the scan and cut machines, whichever model you've got. And it comes again in an assortment of thicknesses. This is 350, so we're now getting into quite a thicker material. So this is now thicker than the cardstock, the 250 cardstock that I showed you. 350, 500, 700. So we're heading towards almost 3/4 of a millimeter with this, which is quite thick and sturdy. So depending on what you are planning to do with the stencil will depend on the choice of thickness. But 350 polypropylene is my personal go-to just because it cuts so beautifully cleanly. It comes off the cutting mat very easily, whereas you will find mylar will actually be a challenge to get off the mat, especially if it's a brand new mat. And also this gives you the thickness to start using dimensional paints. And at 350 you may get some good detail from this as well. Once you start going up, you'll want to use less detail because as it gets thicker, there is more risk of your blade snapping as it's going through sharp corners. So, there we go. Polypropylene, mylar, in a variety of thicknesses depending on what mediums and colorings you're using. We've got budget alternatives with acetate and self-adhesive vinyl. And for precision and fine control, so things like airbrushing, we've got this stencil sheet. I believe Brother do their own alternative to this as well, but I prefer this Frisket brand. So there you go. There's a few ideas for stencil materials. Of course, if you are on a super tight budget, you can use cardstock. You'd probably use this for drier materials though, drier mediums, where you're just pouncing through. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest spritzes, sprays or liquid pastes, but it's an option. Okay, I hope that's helped you get a better idea of what you can use stencils for and also what materials are available to use. They are all reasonably priced. I've talked about budget, but they are all reasonably priced. A single A4 sheet of 700 micron polypropylene was 90 pence. Working down the thicknesses, the price decreases. So really, it's up to you what you use because it's down to the project you're using it on. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below the video on YouTube. In the meantime, thanks for watching and I will see you next time for more scan and cut information.